the identity you outgrew without noticing. You woke up today inside a name that no longer opens the door once did. It still hangs on your tongue like a key, cold and convincing. But when you press it into the lock of the life you think you're living, there's a click that doesn't connect to anything. The house has shifted around you. Walls you trusted have drifted by inches. You're still reaching for a light switch that was moved in the night. You sense it in the small betrayals. In the jacket you keep wearing, even though the lining clings where it shouldn't. In the way your old joke lands with a dull thud at a table of people who remember laughing with you. In the unread message you're avoiding, because the version of you who promised to reply no longer exists. This isn't about age. It isn't about wisdom. It's about the quiet way a story keeps going without telling the hero they've been recast. There are snapshots hidden in your life that you tiptoe around. A trophy in a box you never unpack. A name stitched onto the inside of a backpack. The song you once played on repeat when you thought the world would offer you a corridor lined with doors and spotlights and applause when you chose correctly. Instead, you got corridors that bend back on themselves, doors that open to utility closets, applause that belongs to other people's evenings. You learned how to walk with a professional smile. You learned how to answer questions you've forgotten the origins of. You learned to say you've always wanted this, because the alternative would require you to bring down a wall and admit you've been living behind it. On a city street you know by muscle memory, you miss a curb you've stepped over 1,000 times. Not because you're distracted, but because your body now belongs to a route your mind never approved. You've rerouted without permission. In the bus window, your reflection looks like a relative you never met, an expression you learned from someone who wasn't kind to themselves, borrowed and worn thin. When someone calls your name across a lobby, your face responds a half-second late. It's a delay only you can feel, and it's enormous. There's a story you tell about how you got here. You edit it like any historian afraid of boredom. You polish the transitions, erase the failed drafts, emphasize the inevitability. You say you chose. You say you refined, matured, pivoted. You leave out the nights you said yes, because saying no would have meant watching the room rotate away from you. You leave out the job you took because the silence after the interview felt like a cliff. You forget the long, unremarkable months in which you stopped asking yourself questions because the answers would have made your hands shake. People change, you say, as if change speaks in announcements, as if it arrives with a brass band and paperwork. Mostly it comes the way paint dries, from one afternoon to the next, hush settling over the color until it looks like it was always there. The trick was always the rhythm. The human mind prefers continuity to truth. We will stand in front of a mirror and swear we are the same, even when our outline has shifted. We will adjust the wardrobe of the narrative to fit our current climate without admitting we moved. Across centuries, cities cover older cities. A cathedral sinks by inches as new stones press down on old bones. A fresh government drapes its flag over a courtyard that still sounds like the language it outlawed. Every empire calls itself the center while standing on a floor scribbled with other maps. You do the same. You rename neighborhoods inside yourself, believing the renaming is creation. The older signage peeks through when the paint flakes. If you listen closely, there are patterns. The way you hesitate when filling out the line that asks what you do. The way your finger hovers over the option you would have picked when another person's expectations were oxygen. You walk by a shop selling notebooks and remember the vow you made one winter to write a life out of your skin. You delayed it into spring, then into later, then into the phrase people use to bury a decision without admitting a burial. Eventually. When did the voice inside your head begin to sound like a supervisor? When did advice become an intercom? There was a time when you whispered into your own shoulder at night, conspiratorial plans about where to go next. Now you fill out forms in triplicate, in case the ghost of you who resents being left behind audits you. You scroll through photographs and cannot tell whether you remember the moment itself or the moment you posted. You think of memory as a jar you reach into, It's closer to a recipe you keep adapting without measuring, convinced it tastes the same because you call it by the original name. Some nights late, with the phone face down and the apartment humming around you, you feel like a character left on stage after the drama ends, collecting props. You line up the cups, fold the costumes, sweep confetti into a pile, waiting for the curtain to fall and grant you permission to leave. It doesn't. This is the trap. Identity that's outlived its purpose doesn't exit politely. It lingers, asking for rent. There are at least two kinds of leaving. The kind where you pack the boxes, and the kind where you keep living in a room that's already emptied around you, keeping up the gestures so the neighbors won't notice the echo. You may be performing practices you no longer belong to, reciting oaths you don't believe, carrying keys to a building that was demolished while you were learning to sleep with the noise of the city. A parent's pride, a teacher's comment, a partner's preference, each lodged itself into the spine of your decisions until your posture changed. You can't feel when it happened because you were busy being applauded for it. Affection is a soft persuader. Belonging offers warmth for your face in winter. It teaches you to become so specific that the people who love you can predict you. The price is a map you cannot update unless you risk the warmth. We like to pretend that the hardest decisions are dramatic. They're not. They're the small moments when you say quietly to yourself, "I don't think that's me anymore." And then you keep going as if you didn't say it, because the day has errands, because your inbox resets by morning, because you're afraid of who will be disappointed when you stop pretending you haven't changed. If this feels like an accusation, listen closer. It's a description. The ground beneath the description is older than any counter-argument you could lodge against it. People have always outgrown their costumes mid-performance. The hidden history of any life is the story of versions buried without funerals. We inherit occupations, ideologies, rituals, tastes, and treat them like heirlooms. They are closer to scaffolding that was meant to be taken down once the building could stand on its own. You feel it most when someone uses your nickname from years ago. You pivot toward them and feel your face fold into its old shape, as if pulled by a string that still exists somewhere above your head. Your mouth says the sentence your mouth used to say. It's a kind of time travel, and it should frighten you, not because you were wrong then, but because you are not there anymore, and the person trying to meet you is turning toward a seat you no longer occupy. Maybe this is the forbidden truth. The self you protect like an endangered animal is not a specimen, it's a current. It moves whether or not you approve. Some days it flows like a river you can't cross twice. Some days it dries into a bed of cracked mud that remembers rain. Either way, it does not stop moving because you took a picture of it and framed it in the hallway. There is a corridor ahead. On one side are portraits of who you've been, politely smiling, holding what they loved, proud of what they survived. On the other is a long blank wall, and somewhere in its white is a door that will only become visible when you stop staring at the portraits. You do not have to enter. You can live an entire life facing likenesses and no longer look back. If you continue, you will betray someone. The question is who? Step closer, if you dare, and ask yourself quietly, before part 2 pulls you deeper, which version of you will you choose to disappoint your past? Your imagined future? Or the one breathing now? Look closely at the small contracts you sign without noticing. The ones written in tone and expectation. The ones that tell you how to behave in rooms with people who think of you as a fixed point. You are ushered toward them by 1,000 unremarkable gestures. The nod of approval at a dinner table. The chuckle that said you were the clever one. The arm around your shoulder that felt like protection and was also a leash. You learned how to feed roles the way you feed houseplants. Water at regular intervals, rotate toward praise. Whole civilizations were once built to help you know when you'd outgrown yourself. They had rites that cracked open the shell. A night alone in winter, a pilgrimage, a mark cut into skin that said the people you left behind will mourn you and welcome who returns. We traded those thresholds for productivity and paperwork. We mastered the art of performance reviews and forgot the art of initiations. We invented birthdays and never learned how to bury an outdated role with ceremony. Identity loves an audience, and the audience loves continuity. They will clap for what they recognize, because clapping for a stranger costs energy, and everyone is tired. So you learn to rehearse reliability. You train your face to deliver the one they met, long after the person wearing it has become other things. A child in a family learns a specialty. If you were the responsible one, your hands still reach for the bill. If you were the soft one, you still swallow sentences that could harden a conversation into clarity. If you were the funny one, your mouth spins jokes out of panic in the exact moment a quiet would free you. Your mind is a brilliant archivist and an even better propagandist. It saves proof of decisions that served you and creates propaganda for the ones that didn't, persuading you that a detour was the road. It does this because coherence is a drug, because waking up in a different life would mean grieving without a funeral, because being wrong threatens the bonds that convinced you you were safe. You can feel this in your stomach when someone asks, gently, if you still want what you wanted, and your mouth answers before you've listened. History repeats itself in miniature inside one lifetime. A nation builds a myth, then bends reality to fit it. A company invents a mission statement and trims its workers to align. A marriage writes a script and edits out the contradictory scenes. We pretend we are free, then hire guards to patrol the prison we renamed home. The lie isn't malicious. It's a technology for keeping everyday terror manageable. But technologies exact a toll, and the toll in this case is your present tense. Algorithms have learned this private bargaining better than you have. They feed you back a portrait of yourself at the exact angle that invites more of the same. They remember what you hovered over when your willpower was tired. They keep your previous self alive by providing a stream of temptations calibrated to yesterday. This is why your feeds feel like a gallery of your own inertia. The machine doesn't care if you've changed. It profits when you pretend you haven't. There's a room you enter, often maybe a boardroom, maybe a kitchen, maybe a chat thread where your old friends gather to exchange carefully calibrated nostalgia. In that room, your mouth uses the vocabulary of a person who once fit there. It's like slipping on shoes that were comfortable 2 sizes ago. You can do it, but after an hour, your feet ache and you don't say why. You tell yourself you're tired. You blame the lighting. You keep the ache to yourself because you don't want to explain that the shoes are not the problem. You are. The fear that arrests you is not of change. It's of exile. We inherit it from ancestors who understood that the difference between a group and a night alone with the wolves could be the shape of your laugh. So we learned to shape our laugh, to mirror the faces of those who would feed us, to meet expectation with precision, so exact it felt like love. But survival strategies that worked in a village can starve you in a metropolis. There are wolves here too. They just wear your reflection. The contradictions stack up. You want intimacy and hide your updated truth because it will disturb the peace. You want autonomy and ask permission to be different. You want to be fully seen and keep dimming the room. You tell yourself that patience is noble when you are practicing postponement. You insist that loyalty is love when it is fear with makeup. Try saying these softly to yourself and notice which one makes your lungs hold their breath. The oldest stories knew the danger. Journeys required shedding names. Lovers were called by new titles to become what their love demanded. Artists took pseudonyms to escape the suffocating physics of their birth. Broken hearts were made new by new vows spoken into the dusk. Those who refused to change calcified into warnings. Our age prefers to change the layout of the app. You can feel the old version growing brittle, even as you defend it. That brittleness shows up in irritability when someone asks you what you've been reading, and you realize you haven't read anything that wasn't an email. It shows up in a memory that arrives like a migrating bird, The afternoon you were alone in a room and sang a line of a song into the air just to hear what came back. It shows up when a stranger praises something about you that you stop noticing because it didn't fit the official story. We hold on to identities much longer than they serve because they come attached to a promise. If I stay this person, I will keep these people. If I keep these people, I won't be alone. If I'm not alone, I will be safe. But what if the people were attached to a mask, not to your face? What if the safety was conditional, on you wearing it forever? What if the cost of this version's survival is your capacity to breathe? There's another force at play, less poetic and more stubborn. Commitments you made when you didn't yet know you were also promising your future away. You said yes to a city whose smell you now dislike. You said yes to a profession that asks you to deaden your weekends. You said yes to an idea of yourself that made your family gleam with pride. Those yeses are not sins. They're weather. They soaked into your clothes. You are allowed to change them. The permission will not arrive by mail. When people say, "I don't recognize myself," they're telling the wrong story. Recognition isn't the problem. Recognition is the ache. The problem is allegiance. You have been loyal to a name. You have been loyal to a role that doesn't know your new pulse. You are waiting for that role to bless your mutation. It won't. It can't. Roles have one job, to keep the performance stable. Your job is to decide whether stability is worth what it costs. Walk through a museum and watch the way eras bleed. A monarch's portrait looks over a display case full of farm tools. A revolution's banner drapes beside a ledger of debts. Change doesn't ask permission. It writes itself into the texture of ordinary days. It's the same in your life. The revolution you think you need will look, from the inside, like small decisions that don't announce themselves. You will simply stop answering to a nickname. You will spend your lunch money differently. You will say no once and survive the silence afterward. Think of the person you were when you last felt completely aligned. Not happy. Aligned. Where were your shoulders? What did you ask of your mornings? Who, if anyone, could change your mind? If your present life cannot answer those questions without translating them into someone else's needs, you are already halfway out of the body of that old identity. Your hands know it. Your calendar doesn't admit it. You're a ghost haunting your own house, apologizing for rattling the dishes. And here's the cruelty. The more successful you are at pretending continuity, the more applause you will receive for vanishing. People will reward you for reinforcing their nostalgia. They will call it integrity. They will call it reliability. They will not be there when you need air, because you taught them you didn't need it. They will be mystified by your leaving, if you ever go, because you didn't prepare them, because you didn't prepare yourself. Stand in front of your mirror tonight, not the one that flatters, the one in your mind where your excuses are louder than your breath. Ask yourself a question you cannot outsource. Who are you still performing, and what would break if you stopped? There is a way to end the story without burning the book. It starts with the admission you've avoided, because you were afraid it would dissolve you. The self is not a statue. It is a practice. It is what you do with your attention when nobody is asking for it. It is what you refuse when everybody is. You were never meant to be one thing forever. You were meant to be many things faithfully. The climax you've been delaying is not a grand exit. It is a funeral for a role held in daylight, a quiet ceremony where you thank it for the shelter it gave and leave it somewhere it can't reach you at night. Ritual has always been the technology that human beings used to turn endings into beginnings. Without it, we try to keep wearing the skin we've shed. With it, we get to bow, to weep, to laugh, to lay down a set of gestures that were once home and are now a museum exhibit. Begin there, not with a brand new name or a performative revolt, but with mourning. Write a letter from the person you've been to the person you are. List the promises that made sense then and fail you now. Acknowledge the people who love that version and will miss them. Then, without cruelty, return their invitations unopened. The tenderness is not for the role. It is for you, the one who stayed faithful to a form that outlived you, the one who waited on the porch for permission that was never coming. This is where you will feel alone. Even surrounded, even held, this part requires a solitude that is not punishment but precision. You are listening for a sound under the noise of obligation, a sound that might be as faint as a pencil scratching paper. The new alignment won't scream. It will knock once. If you're busy filtering that knock through who you're supposed to be, you won't hear it. Silence is not discouragement here. It is the instrument you use to tune. History, when it's honest, tells us that continuity is mostly a costume change. The deeper structure, the thing beneath the choreography, is an animal older than your calendar. Call it will. Call it hunger. Call it your stubborn aliveness. It won't negotiate. It will wait until you are sick, until your body begins to misbehave, until your dreams become noisy enough to embarrass you in the morning. Or you can meet it halfway. You can call it by its simple names. I like this. I do not like that. This fits. That chafes. This makes me kinder. That turns me cruel. Letting an outdated identity die will cost you control of the narrative. People will misunderstand. Some will draft you into their cautionary tale. Some will turn your shift into gossip that keeps their own walls standing. Let them. Your job is not to be legible to those who only knew your postcard. Your job is to be reachable to yourself. If there is a single measure of a life at the end of it, it is not applause or security, or the respect of a crowd too far away to count. It is whether you could walk from one room to another without lying. Instead of trying to name yourself perfectly, practice choosing. Names follow choices. A person you outgrew once did this for you. They chose until a shape emerged, and then the shape began to demand. Turn the order back. Act and see what forms. Take a morning that used to belong to habit and give it to the one who is trying to arrive. Make one phone call that rearranges a set of expectations you never agreed to consciously. Put an object on your desk that belongs in your next life, not the last. Wear something that tells the truth. Yes, it sounds small. Everything that counts is. If you want a rule, take this one. Betray expectation, not your inner weather. You will know the difference because one betrayal feels like oxygen and the other like acid. You can practice on benign details. Say, I don't know, when you don't. Say, I changed my mind, without apologizing for time travel. Say no, and let the silence expand enough to prove you survived. You are teaching your nervous system that absence of approval is not death. There will be grief you didn't anticipate, not just for what you leave behind, but for the years you lived with a version that didn't know better. Be kind to the one who didn't know. They did marvelous things. They carried you across seasons with ingenuity. They made compromises that let you eat. They lied when lying was gentler than telling the truth too soon. You do not owe them permanence to repay them. You owe them the dignity of retirement. Some people will not come with you. This will hurt. It should. Love that can only see you from one angle is still love, but it's not the kind that can travel. Make space for the kinds that can. You may find them where you expect, or you may meet them on the other side of your own candor. The first true friends you may make in this new life are not other people, but your own capacities that you sidelined to keep a story straight. They will be waiting like tools you forgot you owned. If you are looking for courage, stop looking for a fountain. Look for tiny dissolutions of false requirements. Cross out the rule in your head that says, people like me don't do things like that. Replace it with a question. What happens if I do? You will not spontaneously combust. The sky will refuse to fall. Your heart will pound like a bird in a box, and then it will calm. And after several repetitions, you will find a quiet similar to the quiet after a storm. Not silence, but a new air in your lungs you didn't realize you were capable of drawing. And when you slip, because you will, Don't turn the stumble into a return. Don't interpret a day of practice in your old role as proof that you are doomed to it. Practice includes relapse. It's not romantic, but it's real. If you find yourself at the old table, making the old joke in the old timing, notice how your body feels. Notice the heat in your face. Notice the fatigue afterward. Use the fatigue as data. Feed the data to your next choice. The transformation is not that you become someone else. It's that you stop financing the museum of who you were. The electricity bill of that place is staggering. Think about what you could light with that power. The kind of work that keeps you honest. The kind of love that can see you from more than one side. The kind of solitude that doesn't scare you because you know whose company you're keeping. Imagine one more image, because your mind enjoys images. A coastline at low tide, dark rocks slick with secrets, pools reflecting a moving sky. Version after version of you has stood here, swearing the waterline was permanent. It wasn't. The moon participates. Gravity whispers its agenda. The harbor rearranges itself without asking for your consent, because it belongs to a larger math. You can learn that math, or keep building your house where the tide will take it. Learning, it means feeling foolish at first. It means moving your furniture in the middle of the night when you hear the ocean in the walls. You are not a fraud for changing. You are not a traitor for refusing to be haunted by a uniform you outgrew. You are the only witness with full access to the evidence of your own life. When the jury of public opinion bangs on the door of your skull, hand them a glass of water and tell them court is closed. When you wake tomorrow, you will still be you. That's the point. The you who chooses, the you who listens, the you who can turn toward the one calling from the next room and tell them you're coming. Not because you've mastered anything, but because you stopped outsourcing your directions to ghosts. So here, at the edge where the old name stops working and the new one isn't necessary, I'll ask you to do something you can't pretend you didn't hear. Before you sleep tonight, write down the sentence you're afraid to admit in daylight. Fold it. Put it under whatever you use as a compass, your pillow, your shoe, your hand. In the morning, read it once. Then pick one act that makes it true by an inch. Then ask yourself, with no audience to impress, no chorus to please, no myth to defend, which life are you willing to bury so that the one breathing now can finally breathe all the way in?